there with Mithy, always fantastic to hear from him. Do take care of that wrist, though. He says it's not,
Yeah,
it's not that
just
bad.
tendonitis, you know,
No,
just a
no
repetitive
problem
strain
at all.
injury.
No, no.
Not
We hope that
important
he
at
takes
all.
care of it.
Yeah. I like the sass, actually. I like the sass coming out of Mithy because he kind of toned down last year and was very polite and was like, yeah, they played very well. We also played very well. But now he's just like, yeah, just make me famous.
The fire is definitely there, and 2-0 for G2 in that one. Let's quickly recap what happened in game 2 for them, because it didn't look like they were set up to win that game.
No, I mean, OG going for that Fizz very early on, you could see that the whole game plan was let's get Fizz fed. The tahm kench, you heard Mithy talk about it, the whole point was to avoid the fed Fizz. We want to try and keep our single target alive, and he had some great plays on it, but during the early game, it was pretty much all about that Fizz snowball.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it started off with a really good gank here from Amazing. I like the early flash into an extra application of the red buff, and then he cornered him for the cocoon here. Then SoaZ obviously went off.
Yeah, I mean, it was just Fizz constantly getting kill after kill up in the top lane. This outplay was, if it wasn't for the tower, I think it could have gone in Kikis' favor, so a little bit unfortunate.
SoaZ.
But yeah, I mean, SoaZ performing very well on this Fizz. Again, Elise constantly just coming back up to the top lane and making sure that Fizz got fed. So in terms of the early game, everything was going the way that OG wanted.
However, we were watching, and I think it was even about 25 minutes in that you already called it, oof, I feel like they are losing the plot, and it turned out to be true.
I like how you rephrased that when the actual sentence was like, yeah, OG has lost. It did feel like OG was losing control of the game despite Fizz getting fed, because when the game slows down and OG and the Fizz can no longer kind of breach the lane where the Maokai is in, Maokai can at least hold a little bit, then Origen wasn't doing anything on the map, and eventually G2 took advantage of that. They got the Baron stolen, which again slowed the game down a little bit, but eventually we saw all these cumulative Drakes from G2 just stacking up and resulting into Baron after Baron.
Yeah, let's take a look at some of those replays that turned it into G2's favor in the end, and OG lost the plot.
I mean, you can just see the power of 3 Mountain Drakes. You have to be set up, you have to be prepared for this sort of a play, and the fact that G2 could get it so convincingly without any sort of response from OG to then go straight into the enemy base demonstrates how much you have to respect these dragons.
Yeah, so Baron into pick was great by G2, but then they made the fatal mistake of obviously sieging the top lane tower later on and kind of getting picked off. So they first took the inhibitor, which was fantastic. But this is the fight we're talking about right here. You know, the full commitment into a flanking Origen. And as Mithy alluded to in the interview, I can say one guy, but tahm kench isn't hungry enough to kind of eat his entire team. So the good flank here from Origen, I think that's what they did well. Whenever a Baron went down, they were nipping the sieges in the butt very early. They attacked on the wards, on the setup. They didn't wait until everybody was in position for just a 5v5 or everybody comes from the front door type of situation. Good from OG here, but it wasn't enough. Eventually, G2 took the game.
And I mean, from this point, OG, they looked so good. I mean, everything was in the bag, and then we were both looking at it at the minimap, and then Amazing gets caught out of position, and we're just like, why is Amazing in the enemy base? Why has he been caught out there?
So, and this is like really speculative, but just from watching the map, it seemed like Amazing wanted to go for the inhib. So they took down the tier 3 tower in the mid lane, and there was room to take that inhibitor, but obviously Origen were dealing with Fog of War. They had to guess. Obviously, from our point, it's easy to tell. So I think what happened was Amazing calling for the inhib, the team saying, no, back. Or he didn't realize that he made a pathing error, and he pathed it into the base. His flash was blown just earlier, and he couldn't get across the wall anymore. And that kind of is an unfortunate mistake to what otherwise was a pretty great game.
Yeah, definitely. Great game and a great adaptation from games 1 into game 2 from OG. But in the end, it's G2 that's victorious and also books themselves 3 points in that. And the player of the game, we heard from him before, is Mithy. We knew that the bottom lane was going to be intact and was going to be strong, but it definitely seems like he has his head in the right place, also reading the meta, although he says there is no meta for supports right now, and having his influence on the G2 lineup.
Well, this is a great start for him to becoming famous. I mean, already getting on the player of the game board is a great way to start the season.
I'd say he's pretty known already.
Yeah. But, I mean, he had a very impressive tahm kench game, especially, I mean, in that game too. The fact that he was saving those important players was very important, and overall, I thought he was a very impressive player.
Yeah, and there's quite a few angry Origen fans out there too, so I guess haters make you famous.
I guess. Well, whatever happens, G2 did book the win here, 2-0 over Origen, and that's them 3 points. Let's give you an update, because over in the LCS studio and on stream 2, H2K, they picked up a win over Rocket, and they ended the day at 1-1 after having lost game 1. Crepo, what happened in game 2?
I mean, it was the Jankos show.
Yeah,
he showed up. First blood is the first part of that clip, but Jankos opens up, immediately gets a killer on Betsy rather, Founder helps him here, but from that point on, Jankos goes off and dictates the pace of the game. He was involved, I think, something like the first 7 of 8 kills. Later on, he was in 17 out of 18 kills, so very high kill participation. After that first blood, though, it's a little mean from H2K, but they started focusing on Koreans. They made Perkz go 0-4, Raze eventually went 0-3, and that was 7 out of the 8 deaths that at that point Rocket had. But basically, this is a highlight montage of Jankos cleaning up everything. It was good in terms of what H2K was doing because they were repetitively Baron baiting. This is something we haven't seen much today from teams. It's well executed Baron baits. They made 2 picks in a row here, eventually started cleaning up Rocket. Later on, they also had a massive Baron bait to close out the series, so it was a really well controlled early game with Jankos taking control of the game, and then later on, well executed, controlled, composed H2K, something we saw in game 1 as well, but sadly, Rocket was kind of fighting back.
Yeah, it was quite interesting to see because we were following it here as well. It was a 1-1, it was a tie, and the teams didn't really know what to do, so they went in for the hug instead of the handshake.
They had the whole Braveheart scene meeting in the middle.
What? And then they give a hug. But yeah, it was great to see him. Player of the game went to Jankos in that game, completely going off. Freeze also netting a lot of kills. So definitely for both teams, a good showing on day 1. Over on stream 2 right now, Splice is taking on Vitality if you guys want to take a look at that. But over here, we've still got a lot of League of Legends to play out today. And coming up next, Schalke 04 will square off against the Unicorns of Love. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back.